Good evening. You are tuning in to AWANI Tonight with me, Cynthia Ng. Death toll from floods rise to 48. And as more countries roll back COVID easing measures, what is the best approach to contain Omicron? That's coming up. The death toll from the recent flood disaster has risen to 48, while 5 victims remain missing. Inspector General of Police Tan Sri Akril Sani Abdullah Sani said that Selangor remained the state with the highest number of deaths, with 25 victims. This is followed by Pahang with 20 victims and Kelantan 3. A total of 32 locations have been affected by floods and 37 landslides recorded. Meanwhile, cases of flash floods hit Kajang today following heavy downpour, but the Selangor Fire Department said waters had receded as of late evening. The government has allocated 34 million ringgit to be channeled to 34,000 heads of households in flood-affected states starting today. Chief Secretary to the government, Tan Sri Muhammad Zuki Ali, said they will be handed out via cash and online transfers.
The aid will be given by cash at Disaster Control Operations Centre or via house-to-house visits, as well as via electronic fund transfer. Household heads need only a confirmation from his or her community leader, and no filling up forms would be required. The government has allocated 1,000 ringgit to all affected households and 10,000 ringgit to each family that has lost a loved one.
The Public Works Department, as well as consultants appointed by the developer of the Seri Duta 1 condominium building, have confirmed that the structure is problematic and at risk of more critical landslides. Kuala Lumpur City Hall DBKL has said that it was due to signs of soil movement affecting the structure of the building.
DBKL said there were 4 blocks affected, involving 34 residential units. Residents have been advised to vacate the buildings as a precautionary measure. At the same time, slope and building repair work will be carried out immediately and will be reviewed by DBKL and the Public Works Institute of Malaysia, IKRAM. On December 18th, a landslide occurred in the area near the Seri Duta 1 condominium in Taman Duta following torrential rain in the Klang Valley.
With the emergence of the Omicron variant, some countries are rolling back easing measures they had taken earlier to open up the economy, such as reimposing mandatory quarantine upon arrival. We asked CEO of Galen Centre for Health and Social Policy, Azrul Muhammad Khalid, whether Malaysia should adjust its approach in dealing with Omicron or hold off on tougher rules.
This is where the value of quarantine in this situation is less. And this is something that Singapore has also come around to accept, which is that quarantine only really works when there are people who are supporting and complying with the quarantine. And this is especially so when it comes to home quarantine. And when there is a pathogen which you are able to contain effectively. And the reality here is Omicron is a really tough variant of the COVID-19 coronavirus. And that is because there have been circumstances where people have been tested negative on RTK antigen tests initially, and then later they are found to be positive, meaning they were positive with the coronavirus variant of Omicron, even at the point in which they were tested earlier when they were found to be negative. And this is something that Omicron has been very effective in doing, which is evading. And this is something that scientists have also found, that the limits of quarantine are now being tested. The limits of quarantine, as well as usability of quarantine, is being tested by this Omicron variant. So it's coming to a slow realization now that when it comes to Omicron, quarantine may not be something of a tool that you can use to contain this disease.
He said even with strict measures, it is inevitable that Omicron would spread in communities and become dominant in the population. Therefore, he urged the public to take personal precautions and normalize seasonal vaccinations.
Our focus today, just as it is in Singapore, should not be on the number of positive cases, but on the number of people becoming seriously ill, hospitalized, in the ICU, and deaths. So with vaccination, these cases have been remarkably reduced. And, employers especially should be encouraged to implement regular testing for employees so that people know their own status and take steps to self-isolate or seek treatment accordingly. And this is very important because right now we always say that the government should do this, government should do that. But really, when we're talking about the future of the pandemic, it's really about what we do ourselves, what steps we take in order to protect ourselves, our family and loved ones and community. So with the Omicron variant, we now actually understand that 2 jabs are not going to be enough to provide sufficient protection and will require at least 3 jabs.
We will go for a quick break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Extreme weather driven by climate change cost the world more than $170 billion in damages, 20 billion more than in 2020. This is according to British NGO Christian Aid that calculates the cost of the world's 10 most expensive weather incidents like flooding, fires and heat waves, according to insurance claims. The most expensive weather disaster in 2021 was Hurricane Ida, which lashed the eastern United States and cost around $65 billion in damages. Deadly flooding in Germany and Belgium in July was next on the list at $43 billion in losses. A winter storm in Texas that took out the state's power grid cost $23 billion, followed by flooding in China's Henan province in July that cost an estimated $17.6 billion. The report acknowledged its evaluation mainly covers disasters in rich countries where infrastructure is better insured and that the financial toll of disasters on poor countries is often incalculable. It gave the example of South Sudan, where flooding affected around 800,000 people. The death toll from Typhoon Rai in the Philippines has risen to 389, with 64 still missing. The country is also facing a threat of new outbreaks of waterborne diseases in some of the affected areas.
Local authorities reported that at least 140 people have fallen ill from suspected contaminated water, including from acute gastroenteritis and diarrhea. Typhoon Rai was one of the most destructive typhoons to hit the Philippines in years. It struck mainly the south and center of the country last week, leaving a trail of destruction. Some 480 houses in 430 cities were damaged or destroyed by the typhoon.
Israel today started administering a fourth dose of the COVID-19 vaccine to a group of medical staff as it begins a study to determine the safety and efficacy of a fourth dose. 150 medical personnel from the Sheba Medical Center in Tel Aviv are selected to be inoculated. However, the fourth shot awaits final approval by the Health Ministry's Director General.
This group vaccinated with third doses before August 20th currently have a low antibody count. Last week, Prime Minister Naftali Bennett announced that the government would adopt the recommendation of a panel of experts to inoculate older adults and medical personnel with a fourth dose of the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine in a bid to shore up protection against the Omicron variant. However, some experts have questioned the wisdom of a fourth shot given the lack of supporting data.
South Africa is holding a week of events to mark the passing of Archbishop Desmond Tutu. The anti-apartheid leader died on Sunday at age 90. The plans include 2 days of lying in state before an official state funeral on January 1st in Cape Town. Tributes have been pouring in from leaders around the world, including Queen Elizabeth II, US President Joe Biden and Pope Francis. Tutu was one of the country's best-known figures at home and abroad. A contemporary of Nelson Mandela, Tutu was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 1984 for his role in the struggle to abolish the apartheid system enforced by the white minority government against the black majority in South Africa from 1948 to 1991. Bank Negara Malaysia is set to issue 5 new digital banking licenses in the first quarter of 2022. How will these new entrants shake up the financial sector, and how will digital banks benefit Malaysians? We speak to Yo Sin Yi, FinTech and Digital Banking Lead at KPMG Malaysia. It was reported that some 29 digital banking aspirants are vying for the 5 licenses. But what will determine who wins?
What we aim to do is to make sure that the applicants do want to meet these financial inclusion, financial literacy objectives. You really should be introducing innovative technologies because it's all about, well, technology is one of the main ways that you're going to be able to reach out to those who are in need as well.
Key contenders for the digital banking licenses include local and international consortiums led by technology platforms like Grab, Axiata's Boost, and AirAsia's BigPay. But what new services can they offer that is not already being offered by existing digital banking services?
You might be having products where savings accounts would reward you for good savings behavior, right? Or they could be giving you other types of rewards, other types of benefits by having multiple products at the same time. Or they might even reward you for completing a course that improves your financial literacy, right? Anything is possible in this age, right? And it really depends on what the digital banks want to do and how do you want to benefit your customers. So it comes with a lot of other, I suppose, peripheral but very critical things that support the agenda for financial literacy and inclusion, right? If you think deep and if you think very sincerely, how do I really want to help the consumers, whether it's micro entrepreneurs, whether it's individuals in the B40 segment or the underserved segment, what can I really do to support them?
How much of a disruption force will digital banks be to the incumbents in the financial space?
If we talk about where we are 5 years ago and now, what we can see is that we could actually say that conventional banks were slower to adapt, but there is nothing to stop them from adopting this as well and to benefit from what these fintechs are also able to gain traction for, right? Which is technology. And in time, conventional banks could potentially also be looking at the same segment and to support the same segment of customers.
And that is all we have for you on AWANI tonight. Get the latest news updates on COVID-19 and COVID-19 vaccines from astroawani.com and Astro Awani app. I'm Cynthia Ng. Thank you for watching.